My name is Harriet Manners, and I am a geek.
Do you have a phone number?
Yeah.
You just have fun, okay? Remember, they're more scared of you than you are of them.
I think I love him.
As Harriet Manners stands on a ramp, she declares that she is a geek. Becoming a model with all the flashy lights has never been her dream. In fact, she has always tried to fit in by being invisible. She thinks she is wired differently, and calling her a geek has always been easy for everyone. She still understands that it's important to stand out if someone like her wants to fit in. In her school, she keeps falling to the floor when Lexi teases her. She's addicted to the dictionary, doesn't understand fashion, and is always curious to learn about any subject, like dinosaurs. She tries to blend in at school, but it's impossible for her, just like it is for her neighbor, Toby. She's still happy to have her best friend Nat by her side. She also keeps getting called to her headmaster's office to be commended for excelling in studies. Her class wins a competition, because of which they are representing their school, Holly Bridge, at London Fashion Week. Harriet wins the Bronte Week Award too, but Lexi finds another way to make fun of her. Her dad, Richard, and stepmom, Annabelle, keep flirting with each other at the age of 40. She watches Toby from her window, acting weird and probably rehearsing for his talent show. Toby tries to flirt with Nat, who ignores him and runs towards Harrier's house.
Fair maiden or want felicitation?
Not now, Toby.
They rush out to catch the bus, and Nat doesn't understand how Harriet is so unfit. Nat arrives right on time and asks them to wait for Harriet.
Oh, for fashion, miss. Always. We still need to wait for Harriet.
Lexi's minions, Ollie and Liv, also known as the Olives, don't let Harriet come anywhere near them. Lexi wonders why Harriet is even allowed there when she knows nothing about fashion.
Why are you even on this trip? It isn't like you know anything about fashion.
As Harriet falls in the bus, she knows Lexi and the Olives are at the top of the list of people who hate her. Nat shows her support for Harriet while the Olives capture her bag to mess with it. Nat is desperate to meet her idol, Wilbur Evans. He's a modeling agent, and Nat seems sure he will discover her like the many celebrities who have been discovered at random places. Toby tries to fit his bag into the compartment above them, but ends up spilling his smoothie all over their clothes.
Pilgrim!
Their teacher, Miss Lord, asks them to grab something from Lost and Found before they begin their journey. Nat is disgusted by Toby and asks him to stay away. She's already on edge because she and Harriet were forced to wear football clothes to the fashion show. Lexi and the Olives have written "geek" on her bag, and Harriet is yet again unable to defend herself. Nat has spent 2 weeks deciding on her discovery outfit and asks Harriet for time so she can fix it. Harriet feels a little confused when it seems like the most famous model, Nick Park, is looking at her. Another top model, Poppy, is getting ready with the famous Val Garland. Even Wilbur considers Val to be an icon and hopes to be as fabulous as her. Poppy asks Nick to get her some RO water and is offended when he suggests having orange juice before walking on the ramp. Val asks Betty to get Poppy what she wants, but Poppy keeps getting Betty's name wrong. Wilbur checks on Nick and hurries out with Betty to scout some new models for his agency, Infinity Models London. Harriet reminds herself not to get overwhelmed with the glitz and glamour of the place. Wilbur suddenly takes an interest in Harriet when he thinks she's giving alien superstar vibes. He asks Betty to follow her, but they lose Harriet. As the models start walking, Harriet takes a sudden interest in the hats on display. Nat approaches Wilbur with the hope that he'll like her. Wilbur thinks she's beautiful, but he's now looking for someone unique. While Nat runs out in disappointment to cry, Nick takes the stage. Harriet gets scolded for trying on a hat and gets stuck. She falls in an attempt to take it out and embarrasses herself in front of everyone. While Wilbur and Betty try to help Harriet, Lexi starts filming them. Harriet assumes she's going to get arrested and calls Annabelle, who is a lawyer, and her dad for help. Neither of them answers. Wilbur then asks Betty to take a headshot of Harriet and congratulates her for getting discovered. He loves Harriet's unbothered vibe. When she realizes who he is and what he's suggesting, she refuses to be scouted and suggests Nat for him.
No, I need to find my friend Nat.
Wilbur remembers Nat from earlier, but assures Harriet that he's looking for someone exactly like her. Harriet refuses to take away Nat's dream and runs out to find her. Nick comes out of nowhere to check on Harriet after what happened at the show. Harriet wants to sound cool because of her crush on him, but ends up comparing his hair to a lion's mane. Nick asks for her name, and Harriet blushes until someone calls him back for work. Harriet leaves in a bus with Nat without informing her about what happened. Wilbur watches her leave and knows she'll be a huge star one day. The next morning, Harriet is distracted by Nick and stalks him online from Annabelle's laptop. Annabelle is arguing with a client while Richard gets his birthday playlist approved by Harriet. Yuji Lee, the biggest designer, approves of Felipe's new dress for her showstopper. She doesn't want Poppy to wear it anymore and asks Felipe to arrange for a new model to close her show on Saturday in that dress. She wants to make sure this model justifies her essence. Harriet comes across a video posted by Lexi of her fall in London Fashion Week, which is going viral. Yuji has approached all agencies in London to find a replacement for Poppy. Jude Paynton, the CEO of Infinity, wants Wilbur to make sure they find a model before anyone else. Annabelle calls Harriet outside to discuss why she bought a guitar for her dad when she has already wrapped the vinyl. Harriet likes the guitar better. She also asks Annabelle what to do if someone posts an objectionable video. Annabelle asks her and her friends to report any such videos for a better impact. Harriet also decides to take the guitar to school because Annabelle doesn't know where to hide it. Nick wakes up in a room arranged by the agency, which is filled with his portraits. He doesn't approve of it, but Felipe also calls him on his bike to monitor his workout. Poppy drops by his place and is impressed with everything Infinity is doing for their star boy. She brings him some boba, which they post about with a lot of excitement. They're selling a fake love story for their followers with all the brand endorsements. Poppy asks him to just play along for the 6 months of their contract, because people want a love story. Nat and Harriet discuss whether they should make fake accounts to report Lexi's video. Ollie starts teasing Harriet about her geeky guitar, and even Lexi tries to take another viral video of Harriet to show her followers that she's a freak. Wilbur is struggling to find the perfect model for Yuji in a pile of hopeless faces. Jude asks him to submit his top 5 picks to her desk by the end of the day. She disapproves of Wilbur putting Erin in the no pile because she's more biased towards popular models. Wilbur insists that he needs his model to stand out for Yuji. On Wilbur's instructions, Betty has tracked down Harriet's school and has left messages for her parents.
I found her school. I left a message for her parents, but there's nothing yet.
Wilbur takes Harriet's reluctance as a challenge and asks Betty to bring out his car. In fashion class, Harriet finishes sewing up the hem and adding blue faux fur to King Arthur's costume. Nat is grateful for her help and asks Miss Lord for some books on textile techniques. Some designs from the Fashion Week have inspired her, and she wants to try something new. Lexi keeps showing the video to Harriet with a new edit and how popular it's getting. Nat gets frustrated and almost breaks Lexi's phone, but she gets away with it because it's not damaged. Wilbur asks Jude to give him a few more hours to get the perfect casting. Harriet tries her best to get out of sports by faking a migraine this time. She's carrying around the guitar because she doesn't want the olives to destroy it. Wilbur arrives at Harriet's school in style and asks the receptionist Sally for her. Sally refuses to give out Harriet's information. When he starts showing his IDs and mentions a Fashion Week pass, Julian Fiennes, the head teacher, overhears him and apologizes for the mishap with Harriet that week. He asks Sally to give Wilbur any information he needs. There's an announcement for Harriet to come to Julian's office, but she has her headphones on and doesn't hear anything. She's busy stalking Nick's profile and learns that he's dating Poppy. When Nat hears the announcement, she informs Harriet. They assume Julian has seen the hat video and wants to expel her. Harriet begs Nat to accompany her to the office. Nat is more than excited to see Wilbur there, but Harriet insists that any discussion should happen in front of Nat. Wilbur asks Harriet to come to casting day at Infinity because he thinks she has a very interesting style. She reminds Wilbur that she already said no, but Wilbur insists that she should come for some trial shots and bring Nat along. Harriet realizes she doesn't want more attention, but Wilbur gives her his number just in case she changes her mind. In their literature class with Julian, Lexi is unable to give a straight answer to a question. Harriet shares her point of view, which Julian thinks is a degree-level answer. When he steps out of the class, Lexi shouts at Harriet for trying to make her look stupid. Well, she didn't really have to try. Lexi keeps calling Harriet a loser and forces everyone to raise their hands to show that they hate Harriet. She even makes fun of Harriet's clothes, so Harriet steps out in tears and leaves her guitar behind with Toby. Harriet realizes that she will never be enough unless she takes charge of her life. She decides to call Wilbur back and informs Nat that they're going to Infinity. Harriet tries to rehearse her poses for the big day. She knows people in fashion wear black, so she chooses what she thinks is an appropriate outfit. With her hair tied and a coat over her outfit, she walks out with her parents, feeling very cool. Richard stays busy on his phone with his boss, but Harriet wants him to focus on her. Nat hopes she's wearing the little black dress she picked out for Harriet last night. When Harriet hesitates, Nat feels like she has done something drastic again. Harriet assures her she will figure something out, but knows that she has probably messed up already. Jude thinks Kat is a great choice for Yuji, but Wilbur seems unimpressed. Betty points out that it's fair for Wilbur to overthink, especially while dealing with a huge client like Yuji. Jude admits it's hard to figure out what Yuji exactly wants. Wilbur shows her Harriet's photo and pitches her as a fresh and unknown face from nowhere. Jude still doesn't seem convinced by his choice. Harriet reminds herself that it's a regular Tuesday, when more strangers get to judge her. Harriet asks Nat to walk ahead while she takes off her coat and reveals a Halloween spider costume. Harriet starts second-guessing every life decision just when Nick interrupts her and makes a playful comment about her spider legs. He makes her feel comfortable and thinks she's exactly what the fashion world needs. Harriet wonders if he's flirting, but remembers that he's dating Poppy. She asks Nick for some tips on being a model. Nick thinks any outfit can work out if she's confident and owns it. He shows her some poses, and Harriet keeps naming them to remember them. He takes a picture of her and poses with her. Nat's mother is impressed by how thorough she is with her fashion knowledge. Nick offers to walk in with Harriet and puts on her coat like a gentleman. Everyone is impressed when Harriet reveals her costume. Nick reassures her and asks her to have fun with it. Wilbur briefs Nat and Harriet's families about what it's like to join Infinity. Nat and her mother are more than eager to sign, but Harriet and Annabelle have some questions. Wilbur fills them in about the casting day on Thursday, where all the girls will be taught how to walk and pose. Annabelle doesn't like the idea of Harriet skipping a school day, because she knows Harriet wants to be a paleontologist. Wilbur tries to explain to Annabelle how big this opportunity is, but Annabelle refuses to let Harriet go ahead with it. She thinks Harriet is too sensitive for the fashion world. Harriet wants to grab this opportunity, but Annabelle is determined.
I really, really want this, Annabelle. I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's just not the right time.
Nat assures Harriet that her dream of wanting to be a model isn't any less, only because she decided it a few days ago. She agrees to work with Harriet on a presentation, so they can convince Annabelle. Poppy is angry about Nick deleting her from his social media. He claims he wanted to make a more personal rebrand, but she doesn't approve of the actual garbage on his feed. Nick claims he doesn't want to be in a fake relationship anymore, so Poppy also assures him that he's not her type. She thinks he's too generic for her. She still urges him to continue their fake relationship because Jude has laid out a plan for them to fake date till January and then suddenly break up. By that time, they would have fulfilled all their brand obligations. Nick refuses to keep pretending to date her till then and offers to be friends. She assures him she's a professional, but snaps a photo with her boba and his back because she doesn't want to back down from their brand endorsements. When Harriet gets back to school, Toby checks on her to make sure she's fine after the incident with Lexi in the class. Harriet assures him it's not a big deal. In fashion class, Nat covers for Harriet when she's working on her presentation. Harriet just asks Nat to arrive early for her dad's party with her karaoke microphone. The party begins, but Harriet and Nat are missing for a while. Nat's mother is excited about Nat going into modeling and thinks Annabelle knows what's best for her child. Harriet interrupts the party to show everyone a presentation about time management. She takes examples of superheroes and the modern woman to assert her point about multitasking. She discusses how easy it is to maintain a great academic record while pursuing modeling. Towards the end of her speech, Annabelle and Richard decide to speak to her inside the house. Annabelle doesn't understand how Harriet could interrupt her dad's 40th birthday, which she has spent weeks planning. Harriet realizes that Annabelle will never agree and apologizes. She pretends she's going to follow Annabelle's rules, but assures Nat that she's coming for the casting day. Nat and Harriet skip school on Thursday to hop on a ferry. Harriet never breaks rules, but thinks this was too huge an opportunity to miss. She keeps discussing random facts about the Thames with Nat so she can forget that she's nervous. Nat feels confident that she was born for the fashion world and is happy about this opportunity. Wilbur assures all the girls that if they make it through the next stages, their lives will change. He introduces them to Jude, and Nat knows her as a huge deal in fashion. Jude informs the girls that their high-profile secret client is seeking raw talent. She asks the girls to be on their best game. As the girls start walking, Jude hopes they can find a model that day itself, so Yuji doesn't go with another agency. Wilbur makes all the girls line up and asks them to act out some expressions a potential client could want. Harriet awkwardly follows the instructions, and Nat keeps checking up on her. Before Yuji's casting director turns up, Jude has picked out some girls she's interested in. Wilbur thinks all of them look gorgeous and the same. He knows that Yuji is looking for something different this time. Jude agrees that Yuji has probably lost her mind if she's recasting Poppy 2 days before her biggest collection. Wilbur asks her not to question Yuji's genius. He has also asked Nick to drop by, who is Yuji's nephew, so they can take some chemistry shots with the models. Wilbur makes the girls wear a garbage bag for their next task, but Nat and Harriet manage to transform that too. Nat and Harriet clear the next round, after which some more people from the agency come to watch them. When Wilbur asks them to pick out some heels, The very idea makes Harriet nauseous. She is clearly very clumsy and even loses one heel midway when all the models continue walking. Nat asks Harriet to keep going, but she steps back to get her heel and falls. Jude has seen too much and steps away with Betty. Harriet rejects herself on the spot, but Wilbur assures her he also had some issues when he started modeling. He knows she's the kind of person who can go all in when she concentrates. He asks her to focus on a spot on the wall and just walk towards it. When Harriet tries it out, she's amazed by how good that feels. An hour before Yuji's team arrives, Jude has prepared a list of models she wants to reject. Wilbur asks Jude to consider Harriet, even if she can't walk in heels. Wilbur reminds Jude that even she couldn't at first. He shows Jude that Harriet has gotten much better. He has a strong feeling that Harriet has something special that Yuji might like. Jude still doesn't think they should give Yuji's casting director an option, as raw as Harriet. Wilbur agrees to take any blame if anything goes wrong. When Nick arrives, he agrees with Wilbur about there being something special about Harriet. Nick calls out to Harriet and hopes that she's having fun. He advises that she should just keep a clear head and a blank face at all times. When he's modeling, he usually thinks about lunch and sharks to distract himself. They discuss how cool sharks are and how much they both love them. He also asks Harriet to be herself, and even teaches her how often to blink in front of the camera. Nat teases Harriet for flirting with Nick, but Harriet still thinks Poppy is his girlfriend. She claims she's more excited about modeling in general now because it's making her feel calm. Nat asks her not to keep her hopes up so she doesn't get too disappointed when they reject her. Yuji suddenly turns up in Wilbur's office because she doesn't trust anyone else to decide what she wants. She asks to see all his models without agency edits, so he gives her some space to go through the headshots. Meanwhile, Nick and Harriet are taking some couple shots to check how they'll look together. Even Jude seems to think Harriet has a good look and keeps asking them to try different poses. The next in line for the photo shoot is Nat, and both friends are excited about skipping school for this. Nick finds Harriet in the corridor when he comes looking for a protein bar. She thanks him for all the tips, and he thinks she's a natural. When he asks for her number, Harriet keeps blushing. The girls get called back to the stage, where Betty has a contract for one of them. Yuji whispers something in Jude's ear, who conveys the message to Wilbur. Nat gets rejected and walks out disappointed. Wilbur is over the moon because Yuji has chosen Harriet. She doesn't believe it, but happily signs the contract. Harriet comes out to check on Nat, who feels bad for losing out on her dream. She assumes Harriet has been rejected too, so Harriet hides her contract so she doesn't hurt her. They joke about how the stupid fashion world doesn't deserve them. As Harriet walks back home, she feels guilty about lying to Nat and wonders how she'll break the news to her parents. Richard has already received a call from Wilbur and is excited about both of them going to Canada when Annabelle is away. Wilbur disapproves of Harriet being dressed like a Yeti when she and her dad arrive in Canada. Harriet admits they misjudged the weather, but Richard keeps being a cheerleader for Harriet. Wilbur gives her another phone and asks Richard to check in and get comfortable. He doesn't give Harriet any time to eat or sleep because they have a meeting with Yuji right away for the fittings. He gives some coffee to Harriet since she's sleepy, but it makes her even more anxious than she normally is. Harriet starts blabbering and is in awe of the dress designed for her.
This is for me.
I think I may have fallen in love.
Millie helps her get changed, while Nick also arrives on time. Wilbur knows Nick doesn't want to meet Poppy, but asks him to listen to whatever she has to say. Poppy has spoken to Jude about doing some brand posts in Canada. Nick agrees to do it with her because he's tired of arguing. Harriet recognizes Poppy immediately, so Poppy assumes that she is a fan. Poppy is asked to leave for the fitting photos, while Nick and Harriet wait for their turn. Harriet and Nick awkwardly discuss Canada and how packing for polar bear weather is not a problem. They discuss dinosaurs and museums, and Harriet mentions feeling great that she has a bit of a T-Rex in her. Poppy comes to flirt with Nick, which makes Harriet a little awkward. When Yuji arrives, Nick kisses her on the cheek, and Harriet awkwardly repeats the gesture. She realizes that Nick is her nephew, which makes her more nervous. Wilbur and Nick seem on edge when Harriet starts blabbering in front of Yuji. Wilbur starts praising Harriet, and even Yuji admits she wants to get acquainted with her. When she mentions that she found their meeting pleasant,
Harriet, it was pleasant.
Wilbur and Nick assure Harriet that Yuji definitely likes her.
Pleasant is practically an epic love letter come from Yuji.
Poppy wants Nick to tag along for a social media post, so he asks Harriet and Richard to join them. Harriet seems sure Poppy stuck her on a bike with her dad on purpose, and thinks she's just like Lexi. Richard is determined to be a ray of sunshine, even when he learns Harriet is lying to Nat. He hasn't told Annabelle where they are either, while she's away on a work trip. To make Harriet feel better about all the lying, he and Harriet record an awkward message assuring Annabelle that they're at home. He knows that now he and Harriet will both be in trouble with Annabelle. When he gets a call from his boss, Dino, Harriet decides to join Nick and Poppy. Dino can tell that Richard is lying about his sick leave and fires him.
You're fired.
Annabelle hears their awkward message and looks worriedly at the pregnancy test next to her. While recording a video with Poppy, Nick starts insulting the taste of boba. Poppy hates that he's not even trying anymore.
If only boba mash didn't taste like 300-year-old cat food.
She thinks it's because he's a top fashion designer's relative, while she has to work hard with brands to create an image for herself. Harriet asks about their next stop for the post, so Nick takes them to a giant spider statue. When Nick claims London has the best spiders, Harriet thinks he might be flirting with her again. When Wilbur arrives, Poppy leaves them, and he makes Harriet and Nick drive home. Richard is left alone to drop off the bike while Harriet pampers herself in the room. She's reading up on what flirting means and asks Richard about it.
How do you know if someone is flirting with you or just being friendly?
Richard is horrible at catching signals, but thinks the best way to start a relationship is through friendship.
Friendship is the best start to a relationship.
Wilbur interrupts their breakfast to rush Harriet to the show. Harriet gets dressed but starts panicking when Millie asks her to wear heels. She asks Poppy which side of the ramp she needs to walk on, and Poppy clearly tries to capitalize on her nervousness. She runs away and ends up in Nick's dressing room. When she shares that she's panicking, Nick reminds her she's part T-Rex and should roar confidently. Nick is as graceful as always, but Harriet keeps overthinking when she's walking the ramp. She finds Poppy walking back in the middle and decides to turn left and falls. When she's on the floor, she realizes she has just found a bigger stage to humiliate herself. She wants to pick up her heels and run, but knows that she should be brave. She bows to the crowd and walks ahead, and smiles when everyone is encouraging her. She then runs back to her changing room and falls to the ground. Yuji follows her there, because she wasn't expecting her dress to be presented like that. She asks Harriet why she decided to become a model, and Harriet claims she just wanted her life to be different.
Why did you decide to become a model?
I wanted my life to be different.
She takes Wilbur aside, after which Wilbur informs Harriet that she's not fired. In turn, Yuji wants to promote her to the Frenzy editorial the following day, which is a multi-page spread. It's the most prestigious fashion publication in North America, and he feels proud that he asked Harriet to be herself.
So sorry, I'm fired, aren't I?
Yuji wants you for the Frenzy editorial tomorrow. It's a multi-page spread for Yuji's new collection.
You are very much being promoted.
As Harriet poses for the photo shoot, Nick keeps flirting with her. Yuji receives some clippings of the headlines Harriet made with her first impression. She's proud that Harriet made an impactful entrance and asks Millie to dispose of the papers, so Harriet doesn't feel overwhelmed.
Certainly an impactful entrance. Dispose of these.
Nick asks Harriet to accompany him to the Frenzy party that night. He feels a little weird when she mentions that her dad will go with her. When Harriet steps out in the gown Wilbur got for her, Richard is proud and thinks she resembles her mother. Harriet still feels more like a geek than a model, but Richard thinks she can be both.
Just like your mum.
I don't feel like a model at all. I'm a geek.
You can be both.
All eyes, lights, and cameras are on Harriet as soon as she enters the party. Poppy doesn't think a person who comes to an industry party with her dad can handle all the pressure. Nick seems confident that she'll be fine. He refuses to make more content with Poppy, so she suggests taking a break from Boba Match and coming back later. Nick still wants to be permanently done with this fake relationship. Harriet awkwardly tries to answer all the questions that are thrown in her direction. Yuji asks Wilbur to make sure she gets Harriet as the main model for her perfume shoot. Nick assures Poppy she can just be herself and doesn't need a fake relationship with him. Tired of all the questions, Harriet runs upstairs to take a minute for herself. Wilbur assures Harriet that she doesn't have to answer anything or give interviews to be a successful model. He knows she can choose her own path and figure out how to shape her career. Wilbur informs Richard about Yuji wanting Harriet for her perfume ad. He hasn't told Harriet yet because he doesn't want to overwhelm her. Richard still thinks of Harriet as his little girl, especially since she's so anxious after her mom's passing. He assures Wilbur that he will always emotionally support her in this journey. Wilbur asks Richard to sign the perfume contract soon, and he agrees. Richard suggests to Harriet that they can leave anytime she wants, if she feels everything is getting too much. Harriet insists she wants to go back down to the party.
You want to head back to the hotel at any point? You just let me know.
I think I'm gonna go back down there.
Serena from Frenzy thanks Yuji for the collaboration and announces that she wants Yuji to be the headline partner for this year's Bazkar event in London. Nick is finally glad to get a minute with Harriet and invites her to a museum. They take permission from Richard, who asks Nick to drop her back on time. Richard feels like his daughter has grown up, but Wilbur points out that a different teenager wouldn't have asked for his permission. Harriet's feet start hurting while walking in heels, so Nick gets her some rubber slippers. Nick is still not used to such industry parties, and even Harriet finds talking to all the people very exhausting. He suggests that Poppy could give her advice about how to fit in. Nick clarifies that he was only fake dating Poppy for their brand. They decide to eat and sit on a bench. Nick shares that he doesn't have many friends, because he lost touch with his one friend because of this job. Harriet discusses how much she loves her only friend, Nat. She asks about his favorite city, but he has too many. His favorite beach is at home in California. When she asks about his best view, he looks at her very deeply. She reminds him that it's a rapid fire, so he tells her about a limestone arch in Mexico that rises out of the sea. As a kid, Nick hung out in museums a lot and decided to show her what he found. Harriet gets excited about the Plateosaurus, an earlier cousin of the T-Rex. Nick shows her his favorite sharks, which remind her of the magazine article she read about him wrestling a shark for its tooth. He found it on an Australian beach, and he asks Harriet not to believe everything that is published in magazines. He admits to being a mega shark geek, and they share a moment where it feels like he'll kiss her. Nick then takes her to watch polar bears and snaps some photos of her. Some girls in the museum take intimate photos of them when they recognize Nick. One photo gets published online, and Nat finds out through the news that Harriet is on a date with Nick. When they all land in London, Nick looks the most rested because he can sleep anywhere. Some fans ask Harriet to take their picture with him and wonder if she's the museum girl. Harriet doesn't understand what they mean because she hasn't checked the news yet. Wilbur also doesn't want Harriet to find out yet because he needs her not to feel overwhelmed. In Jude's office, Poppy's photo is replaced by Harriet's because she's creating a storm in the fashion world. Jude wants to prep Harriet for the perfume shoot, but Wilbur believes too much in her. Annabelle already knows where Richard and Harriet went, but she's proud of Harriet. She admits she was wrong for doubting Harriet and asks her to rest. Richard expects the same treatment, but Annabelle is mad at him for lying to her and thinks he needs to grow up. Harriet keeps worrying about how she will tell Nat about her modeling job. She gets distracted when Nick asks her out for a second date. She suddenly realizes that what happened at the museum was a date. She jumps up and down on her bed, but tries to be casual in her reply to Nick. She learns how to put on makeup and straightens her hair before heading to Nat's house to pick her up. She learns from her mother that Nat has already left, probably to prep for her interview for an internship. Harriet has no idea what this is about. The Olives and Lexi are suddenly very nice to Harriet and ask about Yuji. Lexi also compliments her hair and asks if she can go on a date with Nick's friends. Toby informs Harriet that her big modeling break in Canada is all over the internet. Harriet realizes that Nat must know about it too, and rushes towards her to apologize. Nat is clearly angry with her because of the way she found the truth. She asks Harriet to stay away from her and let her focus on the interview Miss Lord arranged for her. Richard tries to appease Annabelle with flowers and balloons while she's going through Harriet's perfume contract. She thinks he should have consulted with her, and knows she cannot get Harriet out of this gig because she is contractually bound to Yuji. While Nick is shooting for a vintage car, Wilbur finds a video of Poppy trying to act like a victim on social media after her apparent breakup with Nick. Wilbur remembers his disastrous second date with his partner, Mark. He knew Mark was the right person because he never tried to change him. Mark has always loved him for who he is. Nick offers to borrow the car for his date with Harriet for a few hours, and Wilbur just can't say no to him. Lexi asks Harriet about her upcoming date with Nick and assures her she'll do great. Harriet is more concerned about mending things with Nat, who doesn't want her help in class. Toby feels more worried about being stuck between two arguing girls. Miss Lord reminds Nat not to wear herself out before her interview at 6 that night. Harriet desperately wants to fix things with Nat, so she offers to be a model for her interview. Nat knows she'll look more professional if she brings her own model, and reluctantly allows Harriet to accompany her. Harriet assures her she'll be at her best behavior and not let her down. The Olives, Lexi, and everyone else watch Harriet getting into the flashy Chevy with Nick, and Lexi looks quite pissed. As they walk, Nick tries to ask Harriet about school, but she seems aloof. He thinks he messed up by showing off with the car. She admits she's acting weird because she has never been on a proper date before. He assures her they can just hang out because he has brought a lot of stuff for their picnic in the sun. Harriet gets tagged in a comment on Poppy's video and believes that she is nothing compared to Poppy. Wilbur thinks Jude has overbooked Harriet's schedule, while Jude believes they need to cash in on Harriet while she's still popular. She forces Wilbur to call Harriet to confirm her availability. Nick compliments Harriet and is about to kiss her when Wilbur calls. She realizes how late she is for Nat and asks Nick to hurry back. The car doesn't start, and Harriet keeps ignoring Wilbur's calls because of all the chaos. Nat has already arrived for her interview and keeps waiting anxiously for Harriet to turn up. Harriet assures her she's on her way and will be there soon once she deals with some car trouble. When Nick calls Wilbur to help him, Wilbur guides him. Meanwhile, Richard has renovated a room in their house, which was his earlier, for Annabelle. He wants her to have a quiet space for herself. She then reveals that she's pregnant, even if the doctor told them it couldn't happen. Richard is more than excited to turn the room into a nursery.
I'm pregnant.
Having a baby.
While Harriet keeps getting anxious about the car, Nat keeps asking Harriet how long it will take. Wilbur tries to talk to Harriet after helping Nick start the car, but Harriet wants to focus on getting to the interview. Nat is running out of time and is forced to start her interview alone. Harriet finally arrives after Nat's interview is done with a lot of apologies. Nat feels disgusted that Harriet lost track of time because of a boy and chose him over their friendship. She feels bad for giving her another chance and asks Harriet to leave her alone.
But I gave you a chance even after everything and you blew it. No, Harriet, leave me alone.
For how long?
Wilbur watches another video of Poppy pretending to cry about her fake breakup with Nick. He asks the Manners family to hurry, but Harriet keeps going in to change again. Jude informs Wilbur that her flight is delayed. She wants Wilbur to make sure one of their girls is chosen for the Bhaskar event. She thinks Poppy is clearly a better choice. She also asks him to make sure Harriet posts something on social media. When Harriet steps out this time, she asks Wilbur to make a stop at her school. She convinces him with a reminder of the time he assured her she would be able to manage schoolwork. Harriet tries to talk to Nat, who still wants space and has been ignoring her calls. She taunts Harriet for bunking another school day for a shoot and doesn't want to listen to how frustrated she feels. The Olives notice their fight, but Lexi asks her not to feel bad about Poppy's video. Wilbur assures Harriet that things will get better with time. When they arrive for the shoot, Wilbur asks an assistant to take special care of Harriet's parents. Harriet watches Nick and Poppy shooting for something, and Poppy calls her his new squeeze. Nick confronts her about her intense video, but Poppy insists she wanted to capitalize on his disappearance. She also suggests that Harriet is only popular because Nick put in a good word with his aunt. Wilbur hands over Harriet to Val for hair and makeup, because she's the best. While Harriet seems a little hassled, Betty assures her that she's Team Harriet. She has never liked Poppy, and thinks Harriet and Nick look much better together. Val asks Harriet to take out all her accessories, including her matching necklace with Nat. Betty gets nervous in front of Yuji while admitting that Jude couldn't turn up because her flight got delayed. Jude has sent Betty and Wilbur in her place, so Yuji asks Felipe to bring Wilbur to her. Harriet feels like a fashion fungus, dressed like rejected foliage in a bath. The photographers ask Harriet to open her eyes and look at Nick like she's in a dream. She keeps getting conscious and looks constipated, so the photographer suggests they could hold hands. Yuji finds Annabelle and Richard praising how great Harriet looks. She is impressed with Richard's nose when he recognizes what she put in her perfume. Wilbur asks Harriet's parents to leave so he can conspire. Yuji knows Wilbur is just trying to get her to hire Harriet for the Bhaskar event. When they take a break, Nick notices that Harriet is not wearing her matching necklace with Nat. She's worried that Nat hates her because she wasn't there when she needed her. Nick suddenly realizes that Harriet ran out in the middle of their date because she was late for Nat. He is worried he has done something wrong, so she teases him for being insecure. When they both start throwing petals at each other, Yuji realizes she wants that for her shoot.
This is what I want.
The cameras start rolling while Nick and Harriet are playfully throwing petals at each other. When Harriet finally throws some on herself, Yuji thinks she has her perfect shot and agrees to book Harriet for her Bhaskar event. Poppy praises Harriet and assures her that she and Nick were never together. She calls herself her best image architect for constructing that fake relationship. Richard and Annabelle start posing in the bathtub, so Wilbur gets them removed. Harriet is joined by another model, Rain, for her next shoot. She feels very awkward as a water nymph, but gets inspired and does great when she watches Nick with a biology book. When they wrap up the shoot, Harriet awkwardly thanks Rain and somehow ends up kissing him by mistake. She still goes on to join Nick to discuss biology. Wilbur finds them holding hands inside a book, but asks Nick to leave for his Paris flight. Harriet dresses up for her next shoot, but notices that Wilbur is very angry with Poppy. She finds Poppy's social media and realizes that Poppy has posted a photo of her kissing Rain. She even gets a message from Nat, accusing her of dating another model guy when she doesn't have time for her. She gets angry at Poppy, but goes ahead with the shoot. After wrapping up, she grabs a perfume bottle and a director's clapboard from the table and heads into a room. She records a video, accusing Poppy of posting a fake photo of her with a twisted truth. She claims she's tired of defending herself and shows everyone that she's at a perfume campaign shoot with the bottle and the board she borrowed. She clarifies that she's working and not finding a new boyfriend, and asks Nat to forgive her if she's watching. Yuji gets shocked when she finds that the details of her debut perfume campaign have been posted online. Wilbur also comes across Harriet's video and asks if she leaked a highly confidential perfume campaign on social media. Harriet realizes that she has made a mess and sinks into her chair. Jude is at the peak of her frustration as she waits to hear back from Yuji after the Harriet disaster. The latest statement from her mentions that she's evaluating the ramifications of the debacle and thinking about whether she wants Harriet to walk for her in Bhaskar. Jude is worried Yuji will cancel their entire campaign and refuses to be taken down by Harriet. Wilbur points out that Harriet has already quit, which seems to be the best thing Jude thinks she has done. Harriet is determined to go to school one day after the incident. She has decided to focus on paleontology now. She also wants to be there for Nat at the school talent show. Her parents are surprised that she left Infinity. Richard continues to be a cheerleader for her, even if she's working backstage. Harriet confronts Nat and shows her some photos from when they were younger. She wants Nat to know that she is all she has ever needed. She also wants to put Nat first now and focus on their story. Nat hugs her and is flattered that Harriet ruined a perfume campaign to apologize to her. Harriet doesn't know how much trouble she is in with Yuji because she quit before she could find out. The fashion world has only given her trouble till now, and she wants to be normal again. Nick knows something is wrong because Wilbur never comes to pick him up at the airport. Wilbur fills him in about everything that happened and how Jude screamed at Harriet when she tried to apologize. Wilbur needs Nick to convince Harriet that she should keep fighting. Miss Lord also saw what happened and checked on Harriet. Yuji is not picking Nick's calls too, and Wilbur is sort of contractually obliged not to disturb Harriet in school. Nick asks Wilbur to stall his fitting while he takes a cab. Richard gives an interview for an advertising job and feels confident with Annabelle's help. Lexi has heard that Harriet got fired, but she assures Lexi that she quit. The Olives get excited because Nick is standing outside their school. Harriet rolls her eyes and heads out to meet Nick. He checks up on her and tries to persuade her not to give up on modeling yet. He gives her a photo because he wants her to see herself the way he does. He can tell that she's someone who enjoys the fashion world. He asks her to forget Jude and focus on what she wants. He needs her to fight for something she loves. Jude starts beating up her phone when Yuji still doesn't pick up. Nat agrees with Nick and thinks Harriet shouldn't have quit modeling. Nat gets excited when she gets an offer from the internship she applied for. Toby hears Nat and Harriet calling Jude a witch and thinks the best way to deal with witches is to throw a bucket of water to melt them. Encouraged by her friends, Harriet leaves an awkward yet polite message for Jude, asking her to reconsider.
When something brings you joy, you should fight for it.
The talent show is about to begin, but Harriet hasn't heard back from Jude yet. She thinks Toby can relate to being a polar bear in a rainforest like her, because they're both considered weirdos and have been mistreated. Harriet feels like she doesn't fit in at all. Toby tries to make her understand how awesome polar bears are. He thinks they can achieve whatever they want on their own. He asks Harriet to embrace her polar bear and assures her that he isn't scared of being different. Wilbur has heard from Felipe that Yuji will most probably let Harriet walk in her show. Jude doesn't want to risk her job for a fickle schoolchild like Harriet. She has already asked Poppy to step in for her. Wilbur is offended that she's not giving Harriet a chance and quits Infinity very dramatically. He informs Jude that he's taking his clients, Harriet and Nick, with him. All the students start performing at the talent show, and Toby's King Arthur speech gets a great response from the crowd. Betty video calls Nick to inform him about Wilbur's resignation and begs him to convince Harriet to do the show for Yuji. Harriet is amazed by how well Toby performed and cheers him on. Wilbur is trying to eat his feelings and wonders what it'll be like to be broke and on the streets without a job. Mark is very supportive and believes that Wilbur will excel in whatever he sets his mind to. When it's time for the Olives and Lexi to perform, everyone realizes that they are making fun of Harriet and all the times she has fallen on the ramp. Annabelle tries to get Julian to make it stop, and Harriet starts having a panic attack. She reminds herself that she's a polar bear with fluffy paws and empties blue paint on the Olives as payback. Toby and Nat are proud that she finally stood up to them. Jude calls Harriet back and informs her that she and Wilbur have decided to hire Poppy in her place. When Harriet cuts the call, she's devastated that she has been officially fired.
And now I'm fired.
Harriet wakes up and decides to hold on tighter to the things that bring her joy. That includes the necklace she shares with Nat, which she lost. Wilbur breaks into Nick's apartment and asks for his help to make sure Harriet walks for Yuji that night. He wants Nick to pay Yuji a visit while he tries to get Harriet on board with his plan. That morning, Richard is making blueberry pancakes in honor of the blue paint Harriet threw at the olives and Lexi. Harriet assumes Annabelle will scold her, but Annabelle and Richard are on her side. When Harriet enters school this time, everyone looks at her respectfully. Lexi and the Olives leave the head teacher's office and apologize to Harriet. She almost feels bad for making them look like Smurfs. Nat knows everyone is grateful to Harriet because she's the first person who has stood up to them. Yuji is working on her dress when Nick interrupts her. He makes a case for Harriet and thinks Yuji shouldn't punish her for one mistake. Yuji appreciates what Harriet has done for her brand till now, but all her investors and the board aren't happy with her for leaking the campaign early. Nick thinks Harriet gave Yuji free PR, but she doesn't want to build a brand on a lot of catastrophes. Nick is about to give up, but he turns back and reminds Yuji that she's supposed to stand for self-expression. He thinks Harriet perfectly represents her essence. Yuji agrees that Harriet has an impact, but asks Nick to leave. When he does, she starts laughing. Nat shows Harriet the dress she was supposed to wear for her interview, and teases her about choosing a boy over it. When Harriet checks her phone, Miss Lord confiscates it till the following morning. Harriet comes home to find Wilbur waiting for her with her parents. He assures her that he's on her side, which is why he quit Infinity. He asks Harriet to join in his plan of showing Jude her place by walking for Yuji that night. Harriet starts panicking again, but agrees to do it. Since Wilbur's plan includes finding something for Harriet to wear, she asks for Nat. While getting ready, Harriet shows Annabelle a list of people who hate her. Annabelle cuts out all the names because she thinks only Harriet's opinion matters. She asks Harriet to stop hating herself first, after which what others think won't matter. Annabelle assures Harriet that she's proud, and Harriet also reveals that she knows about her pregnancy.
The only person that matters on that list is you. Stop hating yourself.
I'm so incredibly proud. Pregnancy hormones, perchance? Obviously I know.
All of Harriet's cheerleaders watch her step out in the stunning dress Nat created. Annabelle can instantly tell from Jude's behavior on TV and her fakeness that it's her. Jude brags about wearing Yuji's design and being associated with her for years. Nick enters with Poppy, but tries to change the tags on the dresses when no one is looking. Poppy asks Nick to accept that Harriet's career in fashion is over, and that she's walking for Yuji that night. As soon as Harriet steps on the red carpet, Poppy gets frustrated. Everyone watches Harriet on TV, calling out Jude for being fake friendly with her. Harriet brags about Nat's design and asks Jude to admit that they have never liked each other. Harriet understands that Jude never believed in her because she didn't believe in herself, but now that she does, she wants to choose the person she wants to be. Yuji is impressed by her speech and hires Harriet for the show. When she fires Jude, Betty also quits and goes with Wilbur. Jude assures Poppy that she'll get another designer to dress her. When Harriet comes out in Yuji's dress, Poppy praises her speech and hugs her. She pastes a geek sign on her back, which no one notices. Yuji asks Harriet to wear Nat's necklace on the runway, even if they're not allowed to wear their own jewelry. She also wears a talisman as a reminder to stay true to herself. When Harriet comes to the stage, everyone thinks she looks great. When she starts walking, she hears whispers of people calling her a geek. Harriet doubts if she's supposed to be there, but decides that she wants to own who she is. She counts to 3 and blinks before looking up, just like Nick taught her. She doesn't mind being called a geek and confidently walks back towards Nick. He takes out the sign from her back that Poppy put there, but she still feels confident and kisses Nick. Harriet thinks this is the beginning of her story, as her face is all over billboards and she's happy with Nick. She's also wearing a geek sweatshirt designed by Yuji.